don't know what they have to say. It makes no difference anyway, whatever it is, I'm against it. No matter what it is or who commenced it, I'm against it. Your proposition may be good, but let's have one thing understood. Whatever it is, I'm against it. And even when you've changed it or condensed it, I'm against it. I'm opposed to it. On general principles, I'm opposed to it.
Hey, I'm Michael Patton, and I'm really excited about this because I am going to be able to shut down everything that Samson says. And I should be able to do that because I'm the president of Credo House Ministries, and I've got this THM from DTS. Now listen to what he has to say.
Hey, I'm Samson Kovac. I'm from the Theology Pit, and I'm really excited that Michael's going to shut down everything that I have to say. That makes me excited. I have a MAR from TSM. I'll say it like that. This is Divergent Theology, where we take topics. Michael and I both have different backgrounds theologically, and we sort of clash them together. And we see what happens when the world of theology actually doesn't agree with itself.
All right, welcome to the Divergent Theology. It is good to see you guys again. I'm back, and I'm back in my house and ready to get divergent with Sam here. Been having a good time today. My wife's father got coronavirus, so we've been running around as a family trying to get tested and everything else, and he's going to be all right. I think he's already on the downside of it, but had a good time with that. And Sam, I just got done playing basketball, so I might be a little bit sweaty here.
Oh, that's all right. We can
Roy, my son.
We can take care of that in post-op. Don't worry about it.
I was just teaching my kids humility, you know?
Yeah, that's what it is. That's it. Now, Michael, you couldn't make it. I don't know if you got a chance to watch the video.
I didn't
put out last.
I did. Well, I watched half of it.
Okay. All right. So I did show how we attempted.
I know. I saw that.
We did our best. We really did. But then I figured, hey, might as well watch a Camaro theologian and set you straight on some things.
Well, I'm glad you did. I need to be, especially on the gospel, you know. I don't want to get that one wrong.
Well, it wasn't so much on the gospel, which was interesting. It was, you were saying, what is Christianity?
Yeah, exactly.
And then you kept slipping into the gospel and just the gospel message. And I'm like, whoa, wait. But you know what I think is going to be good is this new course you're working on. It's really going to help you spell out like a lot of that stuff. Like what's the difference between that essential and then the definition? Because Christians don't articulate the gospel in the exact same way. Yeah. But we have a lot of those key similar things. And the things we seem to diverge from is where we get denominationalism.
It is. And, you know, the course that I'm creating is called Of First Importance, you know, taken from 1 Corinthians chapter 15 in verse 4, whenever Paul said, I delivered to you which was of first importance. And just it's a doctrinal hierarchy. It's just trying to help people to understand how to distinguish between the most important things and those things that are less important, those things that are worth dying for and those things that aren't worth dying for. And, you know, sometimes that's what we do. We die for anything that we're passionate about. And there's nothing wrong with being passionate about lots of stuff. I mean, that's the way the world functions. People get passionate about, you know, construction and building space shuttles, all kinds of stuff that are really, really passionate about. But when it comes to Christianity, sometimes that translates into anger, separation, and all kinds of things that are unnecessary in the divisions. And then it's kind of just saying, okay, what are those things that are the center? And I draw these circles, you know, this center circle, the one right outside of it, and so on. What's at the very center of our faith, and what are the most important things? And so I'm really excited about that class because I've taught it a lot, but I've never put together a full course on this particular subject. And so there's not that much material out there. There's actually one book that's been written that's decent. That has to do with this, but other than that, there's not much out there. There's veiled mentions of it. There's sometimes explicit mentions of it. The best I found, it's Francis Turton, but Francis Turton. Maybe it is. Mm-hmm. No, it's Pannenberg. Sorry, how do I get those mixed up? Pannenberg. He really does do well in trying to figure out a doctrinal hierarchy at the very beginning. And so I really appreciated that, even though I disagree with him on a lot of this stuff. But hey, that's kind of what got me going on it. I've been reading Pannenberg and wanted to, I said, why don't we just take this to the next level? Because he does so well in establishing that it's necessary and that that there's divisions and that sort of stuff, and going through the history of it, but not about, well, let's get confident in what is the most important thing. So anyway.
Yeah, and his first name is Wolfhart, so how can you beat that, right?
Hey, man, can you imagine having that name? You're automatically a theologian when you're born.
To be. Either that or a football player. Those are your only options.
That'd be a scary football player, Wolfhart.
That's great.
Good stuff.
Well, did you want to sort of pick up what we were initially wanting to discuss?
Yeah.
With the last one that we did, or did you want to run with something new? So if you want to do that, because I thought that was a great topic. I didn't share too much to whet people's appetites with that last video. I didn't want to spill the beans too much on it.
I saw it, so I know how much you shared about it. But yeah, that's what I love.
Because I thought it was, I mean, when we were talking about the stuff that I edited out, I was like, man, this is really good. This is a good way to look at this. So pitch it and let's have a discussion here.
Well, let's try to stir the pot with you and with others and just see where we go with this, because what I'm interested, Sam, I really am. I mean, whenever I was thinking about this earlier today, I was like, how am I going to approach this? I mean, am I trying to tell him something that I already believe about this, or something that is just going to create a discussion? Because for the most part, all I've been able to do is have discussions about this. There's not something that I come down on and you're going to see me banging the table passionately saying, this is the way you need to look at it. It's just one of those things that causes me to scratch my head, and I'm interested in just having a discussion with you about it for a little bit and seeing what you think.
Yeah, I mean, well, see, the problem here is that you've given me a week to sit there and like mull this over. But at the same time, I just finished up 2 weeks of my ordination exams. So I haven't had a lot of time to like throw into it, but the more I think about it, I'm sitting there going, well, I mean, we'll get into it, because these bring up like questions that people have had about theodicy. And that I've always been able to sort of explain away. But
theodicy being the defense of God, right?
Yes, that there is evil in the world, that bad things do happen, but this kind of, in a way, will throw like almost a monkey wrench in. Like this is going to be one where, yes, as deep as we go into this, I'm going to be struggling with my personal theology, I think, at the end of this discussion, in this area. Like this is going to be one to kind of wrestle with. So so kick it off and preach it here.
All right, well, let me get you to a passage that I think is a really good passage, and it's not one of the typical ones people go to whenever we talk about this subject. And really, it's just about, I mean, if somebody wants to know, what are we talking about today? It's just kind of moral dilemmas with God. I mean, that's what I'm trying to deal with. I'm trying to see it in a way, and I teach my kids about this. I mean, I bring up this verse quite a bit sometimes in a very serious way and in a joking way, because it does monkey wrench is a good word for it. But in 1 Samuel chapter 16, there's a situation where Samuel God has rejected Saul, the first king of Israel, as king. Samuel liked Saul, but he tried to get Saul to straighten up, but Saul wouldn't straighten up, and he was just kind of off on his own agenda. And so God said, "Hey, I've rejected you, and now I am choosing somebody else." And Saul obviously didn't like it. He wasn't just going to bow down to whoever comes next. But Samuel was in charge of this, and Samuel had to go anoint the next king. And this is the situation. So now it says, the Lord said to Samuel, "How long will you grieve over Saul, since I have rejected him from being king over Israel? Fill your horn with oil and go. I will send you to Jesse the Bethlehemite, for I have selected a king for myself among his sons." Now listen to this. Here's the dilemma, this verse. But Samuel said, "How can I go? When Saul hears of it, he will kill me." Now that's a reasonable thing, I mean, Saul, he seemed like a crazy guy to me. You know, he seemed like somebody that was off his, and as we go through the rest of the story, we see he is, you know, he's kind of, he's a King Herod type, you know, ready to kill anybody that tries to threaten his throne.
Yeah.
And we see that among most kings throughout history. I mean, it's just horrid the things that they'll do, even to their own family members. Mm-hmm. But here he goes, and he asks a reasonable question to God. Here's God of the universe. Here's God who's in control of everything. And Samuel's nervous. He's nervous to fulfill a command that God just gave him. And I think it's kind of interesting, just that alone, that he asked this question of God. I mean, gosh, if you know it's God and he says, go do this, you don't just kind of sit there and say, well, you know what? I don't think it's going to work out, God. But he does. So it comforts me. That's a side note.
Yeah,
it comforts me that he gets confused even whenever he is hearing God's word clearly. And then he asks the question, he's going to kill me. And the Lord said, take a heifer with you and say. Now, I've looked at the Hebrew and everything else in this and seeing if I could try to come up with it another way, but I think it's a good translation here. Take a horn with oil or a heifer with you and say, I have come to sacrifice to the Lord. Now, I don't know if you caught that, but the dilemma is, well, you tell me the dilemma. See, you talk for me.
All right. So here's the thing, because you already, I already knew this verse was coming up and kind of looking into it. And my defense mechanism, my Christian defense mechanism is, oh, hey there, everyone. Did you know that it has not been scientifically proven that you become closer to God by listening to these podcasts or watching these videos? That's right. Science has nothing to do with this, but you are increasing your knowledge about God. Hopefully you are engaging your brain with us and thinking, I disagree with these guys, or I really like what they're saying. Either way, continue to listen and continue to watch and really stretch your mind. Engage your mind for Christ. That's what we're called to do as Christians. You can check out our websites at thetheologypit.com or credohouse.org, and you can get tons of great merchandise like this. Now, buying these mugs and t-shirts is not going to keep you out of purgatory, but, do you really want to take that chance? I sure don't. Oh, it's good theology right there. Yeah. Well, there wasn't a sacrifice that was supposed to take place, but because God gave him that idea, said, take it, it was then a decree, it was then a command. And so therefore, that's my wiggle room out of, Samuel resorting to subterfuge to get into speak with Jesse and his sons.
Like you use subterfuge, see? There you go.
I know, but that's my way of saying, okay, God's not telling him to lie if what God says is true, and God says, take a heifer and say you're going to go do a sacrifice. There's nothing in there that says he didn't do a sacrifice. Okay.
No, you're right. You're right. And he probably did.
Yeah. And I would assume so, because he invited everybody to it. I mean, it was just, it was known, but at the same time, it almost, in my mind, devalues the sacrifice.
Yeah. That's good. I haven't even thought about that.
Yeah, because God is now using something that has sacred importance to just use as use that as like a cover or like a common thing. It really has no meaning. It's just to kind of get you in the door. So I had more of a problem with that than I did of kind of him saying, okay, well, this is how we're going to make something up for you to get in there.
I'll have to put that on the hanger for a second, because that is interesting, and think about it. Mm-hmm. But the other thing is just basically this. Okay, you got to go. I guess you got a few options. Let me try to run through them if I can remember. Number one, God lied straight out, right? And we don't want to take that, right?
Well, explain how do you think God lied? Because I was having a hard time like really grasping that.
Yeah. I mean, God doesn't sin. Lying's a sin, and so, but as we're going to talk about in a minute, there's all kinds of situations that seem to necessitate at least this moral dilemma to where neither side looks real good.
Yeah.
But here's the thing: God did it, and God knew what he was doing, and God can lie. It's not a sin. You can say that, set that aside. God didn't sin.
Well,
whatever.
that's just Molinism.
Yeah. It is no good.
God lies about all the other multi-universes, and it's not a sin.
There you go. He's existing in one of them and does that. Okay, so let's say it is it's not a sin, and we're looking at this and we're saying, okay, it's not wrong though, because God gave him another option. You know, Samuel doesn't want to die. He knows that this is going to happen, but if he does take a heifer with him, that's all he has to tell Saul. So therefore he is withholding the truth from Saul, from King Saul, and keeping him in the dark about one intention of his visit, the main intention, and creating a new intention in order to cover that main intention. Mm-hmm. So that seems like what's going on. It seems like what you were talking about just a moment ago.
Yeah.
Now the problem is with me is, okay, not only is it hard, but does that give us permission to do the same? Because I, in just about every situation, can do this movement that God made in order to cover the truth. Let's say I somebody says to me, my wife, let's say I don't know why I go so extreme here, but let's say I'm out cheating on my wife, right? And I get home and she's like, "Where have you been?" And I say, on the way home, I'm thinking to myself, I don't want to lie, so I'm going to run by 7-Eleven and I'm going to go to my friend's house. I'm going to go to a couple places so that I can tell her other places I've been. So she says, "Where have you been?" I said, "I went to 7-Eleven. And she said, "No, you were gone too long." I said, "Well, I went to 7-Eleven and Wayne's." And she said, "Well, okay, you were still gone a little bit too. Oh, I also stopped at the grocery store and got this." So you can say all kinds of things and build a case around any type of lie that you want to give, and tell it instead. Now she could get real technical, and I think anybody could have, and Saul could have gotten real technical and said, "Is that all you did? Is that all you're going to do, Samuel? Is go? Okay, let me ask you straight out: Are you going to sacrifice? Are you going to anoint somebody else king?" So all he did was create a situation where it was possible for Samuel to get out of it. Didn't guarantee it in the sense of any everyday circumstance, but guaranteed it in the sense of maybe God is saying, "Hey, just maybe here's what God wanted to say," because God does do this, it seems, in the Bible. He puts up with our own weaknesses and kind of condescends to it in order to just kind of get to the next situation, get over it. And he sometimes just says, "Fine." Many times with Moses, it was kind of like, "Okay, fine, do this," or I can't even think of the situation now. But he seems to, in this case, maybe say, "Hey," maybe he wanted to say, "Just trust me. I mean, I told you to go, and I'll take care of you. You don't even need to ask this question." So if Samuel would have just went at that point, probably he would have been fine. That's what I suspect. I don't think God's going to, go, "Oh my gosh, I forgot to give him something to tell Saul in order to get away with this, because he's going to get in trouble." And so Saul comes up and kills him, and God's like, "Oh man, I should have seen that coming." No, God didn't have to tell him that, but maybe Samuel's nervous and he needs a human way to get through this. This is another option, that he needs a human way to get through this, and God is allowing him to lie in order just to get past this situation. Because it's not God lying, right?
Yeah, but here's this is something that kind of caught my ear with this. Okay, the fact that he's taking a bull with him. Okay, now it wasn't a bull what the priest was to sacrifice for his own sin. In Leviticus, it's spelled out that, before he can make a sacrifice for the people, it's usually that's reserved specifically for it. So is it Samuel's sin of disobedience to God by not wanting to go because he's afraid of Saul, that God then gives God the room to say, "All right, then get a bull for a sacrifice and go"?
But he's not a priest. He's a prophet, so he doesn't. I mean, he doesn't technically have the ability to do that, does he?
I don't know. I don't know if he does or not, because I mean, the only other thing, and like I said, this is my self-defense, like jumping up here with this, trying to work everything out. But my only other thing is that, well, whatever God says is good. So even if we know it to be evil, if God has said it, then that is what makes it good. Nothing is intrinsically good. It's only good if God says it. And I don't want to kind of, wander off into that realm of where anything goes, and so
what is that called? What is that called? God's called something technical. Forget it.
I don't know. But so that's why I'm trying to weasel my way.
Divine command theory.
Okay.
That's the idea that everything's good just because God says it is.
Yeah.
Rather than he himself being good and him acting good because he's already good.
Now, a bull is also what was used for the people, for their sins also. So after the high priest, a sacrifice for himself, and then the men also that came next, the people. So I mean, you could weasel your way around that, but I'm not completely satisfied with it.
Well, let's see if I have. Let me see if I have another one here to throw in and get us messed up. This one you've probably heard before. I've heard it, many times, and this was brought up in this same kind of context in seminary a few times to get us rattled, and I think it really does the same thing, and I think it may help us at least extend the problem to see it's not isolated, but also maybe give us another vantage point at what God may be doing.
Yeah.
Because I think in the end, I do think there's a message here, and I think it's an important message about the character of God and what he does, obviously. But we'll have to get there. Hold on, I'll tell it to you in a little bit. Okay.
Okay. All right.
Okay, so 1 Kings chapter 22, verse 19. I don't know if you want to go there.
Yeah, that's what I'm turning to right now in my trusty Net Bible First Edition.
There you go. First edition. Was it first printing?
Yep. Well, I mean, I had it on back order, so I'm assuming that it was, because that was like November of 2005 when it came out. And all you have to do is
go to Proverbs chapter 4 and see if there's a 1-800 number in the notes.
No, it's not that one.
Yeah.
Yeah,
I've got one.
I know. Well, maybe it's not, because I have a couple of them. Was that Proverbs? Which one?
Proverbs chapter 4, I believe it was, the sexually loose woman.
Okay. You might have to tell that story while I'm looking it up. People are going to be like, "What?" And that Bible.
Oh yeah. Well, there's all kinds of things that are funny about Bibles. If you look through the gaffes in the history of Bible making, especially in first printings, where you got the King James and it's called the Adulterer's Bible because it says "Thou shalt commit adultery," and there's a bunch of them out there. I actually wrote a blog on it once with a bunch of them, but the Net Bible I think is the funniest because they have tons of notes at the bottom, just like a lot of Bibles does. But the Net Bible, NET, New English Translation, has just look at those notes. I mean that's about every page on in the Net Bible. But whenever it's talking about the sexually loose woman in Proverbs chapter 4, a guy that I know at seminary, one of the professors, Gordon Johnson, was translating it, and he got a call on the phone, and he was writing notes too. And he got a call on the phone, and it was from this credit card or something like that, to where they were offering him a deal, and he really wanted to take it, but he was right in the middle of a thought, and he asked for the number to call him back, and he couldn't find a pen to write down the number, so he put it in the notes of that Bible, and it made it in the printing, and it happened to be right at the place where it says the sexually loose woman, and it has a number right by it, like footnote number 4, and you go down there and it's a telephone number.
That's awesome. See all the fun stuff you learn on Divergent Theology. But
yeah, that's good stuff.
Okay, but back to 1 Kings.
Okay, 1 Kings chapter 22, verse 19. It says, and Micaiah said, "Therefore, hear the word of the Lord. I saw the Lord sitting on his throne, all the host of heaven standing by him on his right and his left." And the Lord said, no, notice here. I mean, just the cool thing that you have set up. I mean, you have this prophet who is standing before the Lord, or seeing what's going on, at least in the place where God's presence or his it's just what we know of heaven, kind of whenever we think of heaven. And here he is on his throne. and he has the host of heaven standing by him on his right and his left. So you got this whole host. Who are the host? Well, we don't know yet. It says, and the Lord said, who will entice Ahab, the king, King Ahab, he's the northern king of Israel, to go and fall at Ramoth Gilead. And he wants him to go to war because he wants to entice him so that he will go and get defeated. He was not a good king. He was an evil king. And so God is in heaven, and it looks like he's working to see how he's going to work this out. And we get a glimpse of it. And he says, who will entice Ahab to go and fall at Ramoth Gilead? And one said this while another said that. It's really interesting. Can you imagine this, seeing this, this council and all these hosts, whatever they are? And the reason why I don't say angels yet is because we haven't gotten to the verse I'm talking about. But all these people saying, well, how about this? It's this council, and God's taking advice from people. Isn't that funny? I mean, I don't know. I think it's cool.
Yeah, it's well, it says Heavenly Assembly in the Authorized Net version.
Oh, yeah. There you go. Authorized Net version. And so he asked the question. Everybody's talking about it. And then a spirit came forward and stood before the Lord and said, I will entice him. And the Lord says, how? Because everybody's been telling him how. You know, it's probably a bunch of people saying that. And so the Lord says how, and he said, I will go and be a deceiving spirit in the mouth of his prophets. And then the Lord said, you are to entice him and prevail. Go and do so. So notice here, I mean, obviously here, let me step back and see if you can tell me the problem here.
Okay. Hey, thanks for listening to Divergent Theology. You can visit our websites at credohouse.org or thetheologypit.com and make a donation. Support the ministry that way. Now, here's a quick look at next week's Divergent Theology. We still have to get back to this thing. Is slight deception for the purpose of God, is that a sin? And I'm not convinced that this is in the realm of sin right now.
I don't know. I mean, I don't know either. It's every time I think about it, because like I said, I do get into situations. Let's say, forget about the adultery, wanting to go to 7-Eleven, but let's go to a better situation to where you're lying because you don't want to hurt somebody.